Hello and welcome to Relatable Code. In this video, we're going to talk about broadcast receivers in Android. So let's get started. Broadcast receivers are fundamental components in Android that listen to broadcast messages. These messages can come from the system itself, like when your screen turns on and off, for example, or when you switch to airplane mode. They can also originate from within your app, such as broadcasting a network error, for example, to different parts of your application to display a message to the user, maybe through a toast or a snack bar. Okay. Traditionally, we had two types of broadcast receivers, static and dynamic receivers as well. Static receivers were declared in your app's manifest file and could operate even when your app wasn't actively running. But with the introduction of Android Oreo, which was Android 8, there was a shift. To optimize system performance and battery life, static receivers are no longer supported for most use cases because they consume system resources even when the app is not actively running. Okay. The focus is now on dynamic receivers. These are the receivers that you register programmatically within your app, either within a specific activity or across the entire application. They offer more control and are more efficient in terms of performance. In this video, we'll explore dynamic broadcast receivers in detail. We'll look at how to set them up, how they function, and how to use them effectively in your Android application. And now we will create a broadcast receiver which will help us keep track of when we turn our screen off, as you can see right there, and on again. Okay, this is a broadcast receiver related to a system event which involves turning the screen on and off. So we can begin by creating that broadcast receiver class right there in the scope of our main package. And we can name that something like screen tracking receiver. Okay, and to have this become a broadcast receiver, it has to extend broadcast receiver, just like that. And when extending that class, you have to implement a function, and that function is onReceive. Inside onReceive, we're going to rename the parameters to context and intent as well. Okay. So this broadcast receiver will try to listen to events or actions, in this case, that help it intercept turning the screen on and off. And to do that, we have to go to our main activity and specify these actions inside that activity. Okay, so let's create our broadcast receiver at the top level with private val. We named it screen tracking receiver equals to screen tracking receiver. Okay, and a broadcast receiver needs some kind of intent filter, because it shouldn't intercept all of the actions that are happening inside our Android phone. It only needs to be concerned with the actions that are related to turning the screen on and off. Okay? And to achieve that, you need to create something called an intent filter. So let's create one right there with val screen intent filter equals to intent filter, open the parentheses, and right there write dot apply. Okay, and within the scope of dot apply, you can add the actions that you want to listen to. One of the actions that we need will be an intent action underscore screen on and screen off as well, like that. And that's how we create an intent filter. Every broadcast receiver needs an intent filter so that it can filter all of the events that are happening and only capture these events. Okay? And to be able to work with this broadcast receiver, we need to register it. And to register that receiver, you have a function called register receiver. You will call that and you will pass your screen tracking receiver as well as your screen intent filter. So pass that as your second parameter, and that's how you register a broadcast receiver. Okay, and just as you register it, you need to also unregister it when you no longer need it. And in the scope of our main activity, we no longer need that receiver when onDestroy is called. Okay, so go ahead and override onDestroy, and inside onDestroy, you will need to call unregister receiver for our screen tracking receiver. Okay, that's it with respect to the code of our main activity. And now inside our screen tracking receiver, let's intercept the actions that are being received inside this function. We can do that with when intent question mark dot action. Okay, if this action is intent action screen on, we will add a log, and similarly to the action screen off. Okay, so in the event of action screen on, we will add a log.t with this tag and this message. We will do the same for our screen off, but with off instead of on. Okay, that's how you set up a dynamic broadcast receiver. And now go ahead and run your application. So there we have our application up and running. Go ahead and open your Logcat and just search for this tag. Okay, it will be screen receiver. So go back to your emulator and click on that power button. After clicking on that button, you turn off the screen. And as you can see inside our logs, we get this log because we indeed turned our screen off. Okay, and if I turn it back on, as you can see, I get another message, screen turned on. Okay, and that's how you create a broadcast receiver for system events. Let's create another broadcast receiver to send a local broadcast inside our application. So let's go ahead and create a new Kotlin class and name that, for example, custom receiver. Okay, this will also expand broadcast receiver. And when extending broadcast receiver, we have to implement this function again. And we have to rename these parameters again as well. And when we receive an intent this time, let's just log a simple message for custom receiver received action, and let's call that action right there. Okay, that's all we need for that class. Let's go back to our main activity and create it like we did with our screen tracking receiver. So go ahead and write private val custom receiver equals to custom receiver. Okay, this one will also need an intent filter like our screen tracking receiver. Okay, so go ahead and create an intent filter right here. You can call it custom intent filter, for example, equals to intent filter dot apply, and here we're going to add an action. Okay, this action will be a normal string. It can be something like custom action. And that's how you create a custom intent filter. But when we want to register this receiver, let's try and do that. We will pass our custom receiver and our custom intent filter. You will get a warning here. And that warning is this is missing receiver exported or receiver not exported. Because this is not a system level broadcast receiver like the one related to turning the screen on and off. This is a receiver with an action that we will want to trigger after clicking on a button inside our main activity. And when you have that case, you need to add a flag as to whether this receiver is exported or not. And with respect to that flag, we don't really care about exporting this broadcast receiver. We only want it to be exposed within the context of our application. So we're going to use the flag, which is receiver not exported. Okay, you can copy that and you can paste it here. And you have a warning because this requires API level 26. You can just add that annotation for now in the scope of your onCreate function. And that's how you set up that receiver. Okay, so let's create a button in our activity main XML file. Drag and drop that button, place it however you want. Okay, let's just have that in the middle and let's give it an ID of button broadcast. Refactor that, search for the text and give it a text of broadcast. And now go back to your main activity and let's add an on-click listener for that button. Okay, so write find view by ID. It doesn't really mean a lot to use view binding in this tutorial. We only need this button for now. And we're going to access r.id.btn broadcast. Okay, and after that, you're going to set up an on-click listener. And inside this on-click listener, you're going to want to send that broadcast. You can do that with a normal intent, like this. Send broadcast intent equals to intent. And here you're going to pass this action. Okay, the action that your broadcast receiver needs and is filtering for. So just add that string for your intent. And to send this broadcast, you have to call a function send broadcast, just like that. Okay, that's how you send a broadcast locally inside your app. And when this broadcast is sent with this action, this broadcast receiver, which we created for our custom receiver, will intercept that inside the onReceive. Okay, it will wait for this action, which will be supplied in this intent, okay, which is sent inside the broadcast. So go ahead and run your application again. That's our application. Go ahead and open your logcat and make sure you're filtering for this tag. Okay, so add that for your tag. And now click on the broadcast button. After clicking on that, you will see that you received an action right there, which is our custom action. Okay, the one that we sent right here with this intent. Okay. Last but not least, I'm going to show you how to send a broadcast from one application to another. Okay. So what we're going to change here is just this action inside the intent. Okay, instead of having it as custom action, let's have it as destination action. Okay, so that we don't trigger this custom receiver and instead trigger the broadcast receiver inside the other application. So go ahead and create another Android Studio project. I created one right there, and it's currently an empty project. We're going to start by creating this destination receiver. I'm using the shortcut right there. You can just right-click New Kotlin class or file for destination receiver and have it extend broadcast receiver just like the others, which will have it implement onReceive, rename the context and the intent as well. And let's log this intent like we did with our custom receiver. Okay, now we need to do something extra right there. And let's create that receiver inside our main activity. Okay, so go ahead and write private val destination receiver equals to destination receiver. We're going to add an intent filter. So we're going to have destination intent filter equals to intent filter dot apply add action. It will be the same action that we're sending from this application. Okay, be careful when you're dealing with custom receivers. We didn't register the second one. You should always do that, especially when you're writing it inside the scope of an activity. Okay, so pay attention to that. We're going to need destination action for this example. So let's go ahead and create that. And now we're going to register this receiver, which will take our destination receiver and our destination intent filter, as well as a flag. Okay, but this time we're going to use receiver exported because we want to have this receiver exposed to our other application. Okay, so that it can properly intercept that action. And this will also require Android 26. And also inside the onDestroy function, you can unregister that receiver. Okay. So first we're going to run our initial application. Go ahead and run it so that this code can get changed. Okay, that's our initial application. And let's run our other application now. So let's go ahead and run it. That's our second application. And now we can go back to our first application and just click on that broadcast. But let's leave that second application open. Let's go to our logcat and we're going to filter for our destination receiver. Okay, let's rename that to destination receiver for the tag. Okay, so now in our emulator we have our first application, and for the Android Studio window right there we have our second application because we want to check the logs inside our second application. Okay, so go ahead and click on broadcast from your first application, and as you can see here you have a log received action destination action. Okay, which triggered that broadcast receiver. If you don't have this properly functioning, try to run your second application and then run your first application. That will ensure that both applications are up to date, so that when you send this broadcast from the first application, you will see the logs intercepted inside the second application. Remember that this is an intent, so you can send some data from this application to the other. You can send an integer, a string, a serializable, or a parseable maybe, and you can intercept that inside your second application. Okay, because inside the onReceive function of the broadcast receiver, you have access to the intent itself. If you find my content to be relatable, please don't forget to leave a like and subscribe for future content, and I'll see you in the next video.